Welcome back to the Patros podcast, as well as welcome to 2025.
Yeah, Happy New Year,
Happy
Allan.
New Year.
First podcast of the new year.
Yes. I've already started my resolutions or my man up challenge.
Well, hold on. We don't do resolutions.
We don't do resolutions.
We do a man up
challenge.
solutions. How are they going?
So
you're only
as
a few days in.
3 days.
You can't screw it up too bad.
No, but when you get rid of processed food, sugar, and like processed grains, I mean, it starts to like, you feel different.
Yeah, actually, day 3 is probably when you're feeling it.
Yeah.
The most.
Yeah. So I do feel different, but I'm enjoying like this. What I'm doing is, instead of just trying to eat when I'm like supposed to, I just eat when I'm hungry, and therefore then I appreciate the food I'm eating instead of like, oh, I wish I had whatever sugary thing. Yeah.
No, it's good. I was in a Starbucks a couple of days ago. We went and took the kids to Wicked. Have you seen Wicked?
No. That's like a
so
play,
good.
right?
Yes, play. I'm a big play guy, but I've never seen Wicked in person. And so it was really good, and we were going over to some friends, and we had some time to kill. I said, well, we'll go to Starbucks. But, my thing is no coffee, right, for this first 40 days. Mm-hmm. But I already do decaf most of the time. So it's not a decaf thing. It's a caffeine thing, right? It's just I like coffee. And so I go to the Starbucks guy, and I'm like, hey, do you have anything that doesn't have any coffee? And he's like, yeah, we could just, everything on the menu, we'll just do a decaf. And I was like, okay, no, I mean like no
coffee beans,
like no coffee. He's like, well, yeah, like we could just do decaf, like you could do a mocha. I was like, no, bro, like I mean, no coffee. Do you have like a tea or something? And he's like, oh yeah. Like, I guess that's a weird.
Have you ever done the mushroom coffee thing?
We have mushroom coffee at the house.
Are you doing that? Because
I never tried it.
Okay, I was about to say you're cheating.
Yeah, no coffee whatsoever.
Okay.
So it's going well, but. New year, and it's January, and for those who don't know, it is National Mentoring Month. I don't know who comes up with that kind of stuff, but anyway.
Someone voted it, and someone said, okay, that's all we know.
So we're at National Mentoring Month, and so we're going to be focusing on this concept of mentoring for the month of January. And what's really cool is that on the Patros podcast, we talk about being a Patros. And essentially Patros is Greek for father, if you're just stumbling on the podcast. And that means, it means mentoring. It means coaching. It means walking alongside somebody. And so today we're going to be exploring a little bit about what that looks like, but from a unique perspective. Because we're going to introduce our guest.
Someone call it an expert's perspective.
We'll introduce our guest, Judge Daryl Manning. Welcome to the Patros podcast.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you all having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Judge Manning, you have a kind of a storied history, which I want to talk about a little bit. But you've worked primarily with our fatherhood engagement specialist at Man Up, Vijay Chandra, over there in Hillsborough County, and have seen firsthand the importance of needing a father and what fatherlessness has done. So we're going to be chatting about that today. And so just excited to get your insights on that. But before we get into that, tell us about yourself, man. Who's Daryl Manning?
Sure. Well, again, thanks for having me. Happy New Year to everyone.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
I'm privileged to be here on your first podcast for the year. So this is a great feeling. And talking about mentorship, I had some great mentorship throughout my years, and that's really what put me in a position to be successful, to achieve the accomplishments that I have. It does take a village. We can't do it alone, and it takes men in the village to be part of that, to really ensure that we get those lessons early on in life that'll take you throughout. And again, help you to be successful. I had a great father in my life, virtually my entire life, growing up until I was close to my 40s, 50s. And that was tremendous to see him from such a young age, simply getting up every morning and going to work. Think about that, as simple as that is. Simply doing it day in and day out. It's one thing for you to suggest that to someone or tell them to get up, get yourself ready, get breakfast, get set for the day, thank the God that you believe in for giving you the strength to rise and be able to move forward, and then going to work and providing for your family. It's one thing to talk about that, but it's another thing to see that every day. And I literally saw my father do it for the 18, 19 years that I was in the home.
Wow.
And there's nothing that I could think that could replace that because it was ingrained in my mind. There was not a day that has gone through my mind that I don't think about getting up and accomplishing something.
Wow.
Even if it's on the weekend and getting out there and cleaning out the shed, or cutting the grass, or, help maintaining the home. I mean, those things come from me seeing that on a regular basis. So I saw that definitely throughout high school. I was able to do well in school, elementary and high school, graduated valedictorian, and then I thought, well, what do I want to do with my life? How do I want to proceed? Because, again, fortunately, I had the ability to kind of have the big picture, not just what am I going to do tomorrow or what am I going to do in the next hour, but what am I going to do 5, 10, 15 years down the road? And so one of the things I gave thought to was the military. And I didn't have too many military members in my family, but when I brought that up to my mom and dad, they encouraged me to move forward. And this is even, I like to share with the young folks that come through the courtroom and that I go out and speak to, and I'll always ask them, how old are you? And they'll be 15, 14, 15, some are 16. And I'll say, just a year older than you are right now is when I joined the military. And I went off and left my family. And it's always a funny story because since I was 17, I wasn't old enough to sign a contract. So my mommy actually had to come with me and sign my enlistment contract so I could join the military. Long story short, 30 years later, it was a great career for me. It took me around the world many times. Some places I wanted to be, some places I didn't want to be. But what that is, that's life. That's life. We don't always get to pick and choose what we want to do. We deal with the situations that are presented to us. And because I had that strong father figure in my life, I was able to adjust and deal with things that life threw at me. And really started with that solid foundation. And I know that that's essential for all of our children, but certainly our young boys growing up. They need that solid foundation so they can have the tools, have the values, have the respect for not only themselves but others around them, and so they can put those things in practice.
That's really good. You obviously you're on the bench now, right, as it were.
Correct.
Not bench like in a football game. Right. No, just thinking we're coming off of college football, and so I'm thinking that sounds weird. But you preside in a courtroom as the legal entity for making decisions. How did you get into law? Like, how did you know that law wanted to be something that you wanted to pursue?
Sure. I knew it early on in my life. I was probably in the 10th or 11th grade, and I grew up in New York. And so it was interesting that I would travel a pretty lengthy distance to get to high school, and I would travel on a bus and a train to get there. And navigating through New York City is not always the easiest thing to do in life, especially when you're a teenager. And it's fraught with all kind of issues. Again, being that I had that solid foundation, it kept me from going astray. But I saw many of my friends go astray, and sometimes it was fatal. So I was able to successfully navigate. But the interesting thing was when I got to school, and I was a 9th or 10th grader in high school, we had rules that we could not go out for lunch. So I'm thinking, wait a minute, I navigate through New York City for 2 hours a day just to get to school, right? On the bus and on the train and with all folks, the cross level of society. and then you get to school and you want to go to lunch, and then they had a policy for the safety of everyone, you can't go out to lunch. So I said, something is just not right with this, and how do I get it fixed? And I talked to my parents, and they said, make your argument. And that's what it is about being a lawyer, being an advocate, going in and putting a legitimate, cogent argument together. Not just that I took the bus to school, I should be able to just run out in the street, but the fact that at that age I was able to navigate, make sure I got myself to school on time, I complied with all the requirements, and I can't go out and get me a burger, during lunch. So I was able to be successful, make that argument, and
Nice.
So that's kind of what kind of ingrained it in me to work hard toward being a lawyer. Ended up, as I mentioned, joined the military, went to law school, was a judge advocate. That's a JAG in the military. You prosecute, defend. I did that for a while, and then I came out and had a civilian career here in Hillsborough County, Florida, for a number of years with the Attorney General's office, working there. And then the governor saw fit at that time to appoint me to the bench, and it's been a decade now that I've been serving.
Man, well, I speak on all of us here to say thank you for serving.
Yes.
First of all, both in the military and as a judge, because these are decisions that are going down where you're impacting a lot of lives, and with that privilege comes is obviously great responsibility. So I'm sure that has weighed on you from time to time in terms of this great responsibility that you have.
Oh, there's not a day it doesn't weigh in on me, and there are many serious decisions that have to be made. And as we know, when you're going into court, usually one side leaves victorious, and the other side is usually not so happy with the outcome. But I pride myself in listening to everyone that comes in, to hear the information they present, to review any precedent in terms of case law that they may share with me. But again, the important part is always give them the opportunity to be heard. So there might be people that leave disgruntled and not happy because of my ruling, but they won't leave and say that they weren't heard by the judge.
That's good.
Because I know that feeling on the other side, that you want to share the information that you have. And so for the most part, I even see people where I rule against them, but they have a sense of relief that they had a chance to share with me what their thoughts and their feelings are. Because sometimes it's not only about the law. I mean, people come in, imagine a layman coming in and they have a very strong feeling about something. They're not arguing about a statute or a regulation.
That's right.
They're letting me know about how they felt when someone did them wrong, or when something happened to them. That's what they're sharing. And so I have an opportunity to listen to that. That's my role. That's my job. But at the end analysis, at the end of the day, I have to make a decision. And I try to make an informed decision. And the area I sit, and we'll get into that, there are some serious implications in terms of decisions that are made sometimes.
Yeah, that's right.
Could you, for the viewers, just maybe explain in the area that you sit and what those decisions can look like?
Absolutely. So for the most part, and even when we bring young folks to the courthouse, the first thing they want to see is, where's the criminal side? Where's the criminal case? Are there any murder cases going on?
They want to know what the juicy story is. Or something. Yeah.
Most definitely. And I understand that. That's what we see in the news.
Yeah.
That's what it's highlighted. If it bleeds, it leads. I mean, you hear those kind of things. So I try to share with everyone that there are multi-sides of the courthouse. And certainly we have a criminal side, and we have a good contingent of criminal court judges. But we also have a civil side where they're dealing with neighborhood disputes. They're dealing with vehicles that maybe were sent in for repair and it didn't happen appropriately. There's also the family law side of the house, where you deal with dissolution of marriages or name changes or child custody issues. Then there's also kind of a niche area, and it's called dependency. It's very similar to family law, but it deals with children, our precious children. Whether you're dealing with adults, elderly, or children, those are individuals that are very vulnerable at some point in time in our community, in all of our communities. And so if there's some allegations that those children have been abused, then there are certain provisions in the law that allow for the courts to step in and to monitor and to oversee what happens specifically with those children and that family in general, to see if it's safe for the children to remain in place, or if there are sufficient services that are available to help the children, help the family, and see if they can be put back together. So I have a chance to sit and preside in that area, and then simultaneously I also sit in a drug court, a drug court that gives opportunity for individuals that, unfortunately, this scourge is attacking all communities. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter race, it doesn't matter socioeconomic levels. We hear about the meth, we hear about the fentanyl, we hear about the synthetic drugs, and those are affecting our community throughout Florida and throughout our country. And so I have an opportunity to sit with folks and to see how we can get them past that, get them in some residential treatment programs, get them into outpatient treatment programs where they can turn their lives around and then hopefully put their families back together.
Wow.
Yeah. The dependency system, you used the word dependency, and it's a system that at Man Up we work in. And so we know the families that are impacted. In your experience, this is not, I don't want to lead the witness here. I feel like he talked about JAG,
Jeff's dream is to be a lawyer in a different life.
In a different life. I'm an attorney up there,
Right, I'll give you some leeway
arguing the cases, yeah. So anyway, but in your time on the bench, as you have seen these cases come down, why are children separated from their parents? What are some of the more common reasons that you see?
Sure. There are a number of kind of garden variety cases that we see on a regular basis. As I said, the substance abuse is huge that exists. Because of substance abuse, there's also ties to criminal activity. And so you'll see people get involved in that, unfortunately. Domestic violence, people not having the ability to properly deal with their anger and frustrations, whether it be because of the economic conditions they find themselves in, the car is broken down, they're behind on the rent, difficulty to afford groceries and things like that. That leads to a lot of internal strife. And sometimes those arguments go from verbal to physical. And so we'll see a good deal of domestic violence involved in the home. And so those are some of the general things that lead to children being removed on a more often basis than not.
Yeah. And in that time, obviously with our organization, we're really looking to see men step up. Has there been some common denominators around the men, and in particular, as we look at their family history and backgrounds, have you noticed any trends there?
Oh, absolutely. And so you try not to put everybody into a cookie-cutter situation, but you do see trends, and they're unmistakable, and you can't sit back and deny them. So you need to address them, and it's not it's not stereotyping anyone. It's not putting people in a box and saying they must stay there. But we do see often that the fathers in the home are absent. And they're absent for a number of reasons. One, there may have been some domestic violence and they've been forced out of the home. And if they're asked to leave the home, that might be a good thing because they need to be separated. We don't want to see ongoing domestic violence. We want to see them get appropriate services and treatment if necessary. There's sometimes that criminal element where fathers are incarcerated for a significant period of time, and then they become estranged from their families, and then the reintegration process is extremely difficult. If you have any type of criminal background, if you have a felony, trying to get back into the workforce, trying to get housing, and simply trying to reintegrate into your family when your family has been moving on while you've been incarcerated. So that's always difficult. And then if the relationship is strained between the father and the father trying to get back in and the mother being somewhat hesitant, allowing that, we'll see the difficulties there. And that kind of manifests itself when we see these individuals in court. So ordinarily what would happen is if the mother is with the children and the father is away for whatever reason, whether they voluntarily have absence themselves from the home, or they were told to leave, or they were unfortunately incarcerated, whatever the case may be, if something happens with the mother, substance abuse, or just falls on very difficult economic times and the children are removed, what will happen initially is there's a search for that father. And oftentimes we come up with the father who may be out there sometimes not knowing what's going on, and they're wishing they were involved, or they know about it and they're saying, I don't think I can do anything. So that's why we struggle in the court sometimes, because there's an obligation to bring these folks back into the fold, or at least give them an opportunity. Well, there are times when they feel that the system is not really set up to assist them or to give them the support that they need. And they see, whether it be anecdotal or whether it be in actuality, they're seeing a lot of assistance go toward the matriarch of the family. And oftentimes they're saying, well, what about me? Not just some wild stories, but I just heard this yesterday with a father that was present, had been away for a while, was present and said, what about me? Are there any services that can assist me that I could avail myself to? And so one of the things, I was happy that he was there. That's the first thing.
Just showing up is like huge.
It is. Yeah. It is. Because why do people show up? Because they care.
Yeah, that's good.
They don't just show up because they have nothing else to do. And again, these folks don't live around the corner. Some of them are taking 2 or 3 buses to get to downtown. Then after they get downtown, they have to walk to the courthouse. Then they have to go through security. So this is not some easy feat. I mean, I pull into a garage and I'm in my office in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
So I realize that for them to go through this, they care. Then once they're there, I see the lack of support that has been around because they haven't been around, and the support usually from the Department of Children and Families is to an adult that is present, that is around, that they can go ahead and give some assistance to. And then the father, oftentimes kind of the Johnny-come-lately, hey, what about me? Which about a year and a half ago, I was so ecstatic to hear about the initiative with Man Up and partnering with Children's Network to provide some support to these fathers that feel kind of left out, feel not involved in the system, feel that people aren't looking out for their welfare as well. And so you would see a gradual change of these folks, again, showing up to the courthouse, expressing their interest, sometimes disgruntled and saying, nobody's there for me. So, but just the fact of getting them there was the start.
Yeah.
In the process of, like, from your initial contact with some of these fathers and them then having contact from a supportive entity like Man Up, do you see a change in their demeanor or even behavior? And it's fine if you say that you haven't, but have you?
Oh, sure. No, I'm going to be brutally honest. I mean, there's no other way for me to be. I mean, I have to be like that in court. I've taken an oath to be upfront and honest, and that's what I said in court today. I said, you might not like what I say, but I'm going to explain it. I'm going to support it, and that's going to be my decision. So
that's good.
I think there's one way to be, and so I have seen a sea change. I have seen. I'm not familiar with too many other organizations in the area. Vijay Chandra showed up to my courtroom, unbeknownst to me, simply just showed up one day last year and said, I'm present, and I'm with Man Up. And I said, who is Man Up? And he took the opportunity to explain that to me. I knew about the situation with the fathers because I had been working in the dependency area as a lawyer. So I knew about the difficulties that, again, whether it's actual or perceived, that they're facing. And so when VJ told me about the program and that I could assign Man Up to different individuals within the court cases, I was ecstatic about that, and I have seen changes. And of course, I can't talk about any particular cases here, but there's one that stands out in my mind where I was very skeptical of the individual changing his ways, being engaged. He was telling me a lot of things in court, and I was seeing little to no action on his behalf. And I let him know that, look, you can say all you want to say here, but the actions will speak louder than anything else. And then VJ got involved with him and had been working, and then VJ will appear in court on a regular basis and explain the interaction that he has with the individuals, and he did with this particular gentleman. Again, I had I had little hope that he would change because of the track record. So he was going to be given a full opportunity, whether I still had any hope or not, because he had been given some great opportunities and appeared to have squandered them. But I wanted to continue to give him opportunities to be successful. And then literally in the 11th hour, with the assistance of VJ and maybe whatever else that he was availing himself to, it's some things behind the scenes that I'm not privy to. But I saw a complete sea change in his demeanor, his behavior, his attitude. He wanted to be involved with his family. He wanted to take that opportunity to be a mentor to his children, to be a role model there. And he took that on. Apparently he was traveling an hour and a half to see them, quite a distance. And again, that's what we do for our children, right?
Yeah,
so
that's
so I don't want to put a cape on him and say you're traveling to see your children, because I don't know where he was before.
But so many times you see parents not willing to even travel 10 minutes. So for you, you're seeing someone put the effort in 10 times.
That was huge.
Yeah.
That was huge to see him doing that and wanting to do that multiple times a week if he could get away from work and make that happen.
Yeah.
So that was great. And then to understand the dynamics between Man Up and this gentleman, and where they talked about a brotherhood. We're not here just to assist you with a visit with your children, or paying a bill that you're having trouble with, but about dealing with your feelings, about your feelings of self-worth, that you mean something and that you have something to offer.
Wow. And
to hear those discussions transpire and to get an idea of what was going on internally with him, and to see that significant change was tremendous, and the entire court room was able to witness this change.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's important to convey. Florida in the last couple of years has passed a bill kind of synonymous with the fatherhood bill. It's kind of a pseudonym that they've given that. And part of that was to implement these fatherhood engagement specialists in every judicial circuit. And VJ is one of those, and we have others. And, but that's just one small piece of the puzzle, right? So now you've got an advocate. Okay, I got somebody who's fighting for me, someone who's actually in my corner, because, and this is right, wrong, or indifferent, the child welfare system is heavy on the female side, right? So if you go into a case management organization, a lot of times it's heavy, in some cases 75, 80% female. And so a lot of times the guy, and because mom is usually the responsible, she's usually the responsible one, and she's usually the responsive one, it would make sense from that case management organization to deal with mom, because you're going to get your biggest bang for your buck. But in the meantime, the dads often feel, well, who's there for me? And so that's a really cool opportunity for us, but it's not just that fatherhood engagement specialist. You mentioned the brotherhood. And that's one of the things that I want to really convey is that once we get these guys together, and we got a group of guys meeting tomorrow morning, we got guys that are meeting every week together that were strangers before, who now they discover, wait a second, you have this in common with me. We understand each other. There's a tremendous power behind that, and a tremendous, I think, bond that occurs, because as men, we like to hide things. We like to present that we're tough. We like to present that we have everything handled. But at the end of the day, we're human. We feel, we cry, we have pain, we're hurt. And so to be able to get through that with this one gentleman that you're talking about, I find to be a remarkable piece of not just what we're doing, but just the human condition that, hey, if we'll give someone a chance, even a man who seems hardened, and to your point, you have to be skeptical in your position, right? You can't just believe everything that you hear.
Absolutely.
But once you see that man start, your firsthand, you've seen change.
Sure, no question. Now, there are cases on the flip side,
For sure.
As well. So it's not all pie and ice cream.
Yeah.
It runs the gamut. In fact, I don't even have to reach back for weeks or months. And just had a situation yesterday where Mr. Chandra was there in court, and had a gentleman. Again, we had another gentleman to show up. That's tremendous, because again, this is unusual. We don't always have these gentlemen that are showing up and raising their hand and saying, I want to be involved. And so we had a gentleman to show up. Unfortunately, he had a lack of action. I hadn't seen any action, and he had been involved with Man Up. And so I said, sir, what are you going to do? Do you want to be involved? Do you want to be engaged? And he simply cited what we're talking about, that, well, I don't think they're for me. They, meaning the case management organization, the system, I don't think they're for me. I think they're here to give things to others, like the mother in this case. And I said, all right, sir, well, you are engaged with Man Up, right? And he said, yes, I am. I said, all right, we see Mr. Chandra right there. And he said, sure, I'm familiar with him. He said, but I've been hearing some things that has been negative toward me. I've been hearing some things that in essence, he was saying cause him concern. So as I was able to decipher that, he wasn't saying that he wasn't engaged. He didn't have VJ around to talk with him. But he wasn't just getting the platitudes that, oh, you're great, you're a wonderful father, no problem, you're the world's greatest dad. No, he wasn't hearing that.
He didn't like the tension.
That's right. He didn't like the realism that he was getting from VJ, where he was letting him know, look, this is where you might be falling short. This is where you need to step up.
Yeah.
These are the things that you need to do to be successful.
That's good.
You're not going to get into the courtroom and snow the judge.
Yeah.
It's not going to work that way. And so that's what he was getting at, that he was hearing realism, not just the platitudes. And I said, sir, what do you want? I said, do you want to continue with engaging with VJ? Yeah, I don't have a problem with him. He's pretty cool. So he talked about how cool he was. But on the flip side, those things that he was saying, he wasn't comfortable with everything. And that's because sometimes you have to hold up the mirror to individuals and let them know that this is where you fall short. And you're correct, Jeff. I mean, we have feelings, and I see these folks. They have feelings, and they hurt just like everyone else. But we are dealing with families. We're dealing with children that need mentors and fathers. And so at some point in time, you have to take off the kid gloves and really have those heart-to-heart discussions. I wasn't part of that, but I could decipher from the discussion that the father was having with me that he had that heart-to-heart conversation with VJ, and it really rang true. And he heard about a lot of those things, and he was kind of taken aback because he was kind of told, this is how it is, and this is where you need to step up. So I really appreciated that opportunity to hear that from him, and I let him know that he has another opportunity, and it's a chance for your actions now to speak, and we'll see. So that's a work in progress.
Yeah, it has to be such a delicate. I mean, every single case that you're working on has to be so delicate because you're attributing value to the human. But the whole goal of your seat is to not only hold justice, but accountability to their responsibility as either a father, a mother, or just a civilian.
Correct.
And So I think it's incredible that there's organizations to then support what you're doing in the room. But I can appreciate the fact that that's hard. How do you even navigate that? Because that's not easy to tell somebody, hey, I want you to understand that you're valuable, but that doesn't mean you get a pass.
Can't do whatever you want.
Yeah, you can't just keep getting away with it because somebody else hurt you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. It's. I think you hit the nail on the head. That is a difficult conversation to have, but when you do what we're doing right here, when you have the conversation, when you're not sitting solely as a judge and talking down to people, and then they're staring off in space.
Yeah.
When you actually have that conversation and you let them know, and you make it very clear that you are accountable, and I'm going to hold you accountable, and here are the requirements. We're not going to change the goalposts. We're not going to move it. As we talk about, we're in college football season. We're not going to change the requirements of the game in the middle. This is what it is. Here are the requirements, and you and everyone else are going to be held accountable for those things. And I let them know, by the way, so am I. I'm going to be held accountable. So if I tell you that we're going to get these things done, if you do this, because in essence it's a contract. And that's what I engage with these folks. I engage with a contract with these fathers and mothers and others. But I'm engaging with a contractual agreement, letting them know,
if you do
if
this,
you do
I
these
do
things, that's correct. Now, the Department of Children and Families is involved. They're part of that. And I let them know that when the parents are engaged and they're moving forward and getting things accomplished, then these things that are listed here, they need to happen. And it's my job to enforce that, whether it be from the parent side or from the agency side, to make sure those happen, because that's the way that we're going to be able to bring these families back together. The initiative that you talked about, the state of Florida has, these children should not be on the government's dime when we have viable parents out there, people that can step up to the plate. And sometimes they're okay with sitting on the sidelines. So I can't allow that to happen. And I have to let them know that it's time to step up. But none of the judges or anyone else can do it on our own. We can't simply, we have 20, 30 minutes in the courtroom, and I won't see them for another couple of weeks at the soonest. So we have to have organizations such as Man Up and Go to have that frequent contact. In fact, I'm not allowed to have contact with the parents outside of the courtroom. I can't call up the father and say, "Hey, how's it going?" Hey, you get by and see the kids and take them out to the pier and go fishing with them. I'd like to have that conversation, but I cannot. So we need organizations within the state that can get out and do it. We need individuals that can sit with those folks, even when times are tough. When, hey, we haven't seen you in a week or so. What's going on? I have a couple of things going here and there. All right. Well, you're going to be back in court a couple of weeks. Is the judge going to buy that? That you're a little occupied and getting stuff done, but all these things that you all talked about, you haven't made any headway. So that's why it's essential that it kind of goes back to that village concept. That sure, we can have those discussions in the courtroom, we can lay out the framework, but how are we going to implement those?
The fatherhood bill that passed, one of the provisions in it was that there would be dollars available from the state for father mentoring, coaching kind of entities to come in and apply for grants that would go towards that. So we're talking about, what is working and what not is working. What we're seeing is that gave us an opportunity to scale what we were doing, because we were doing something on a smaller kind of scale, depending on, private donations and things of that nature. And, we were happy where we were at, but this gave us an opportunity to actually scale. There's other infrastructure and resources put in place by the state to allow even organizations that were smaller than us to kind of, ramp up their services. And now what we're seeing is, wow, like, if we can just get access to some of these dads. Now, to your point earlier, this is not a 100% thing here, but life is never 100%.
Humans are humans.
We're going to miss some of the time.
Sure.
Hospitals aren't 100% either.
It's not an exact science.
Yeah.
But when you look at the cost-benefit analysis, it's fortunate that they put in the legislation to make grants available, because if we look down the road and these fathers are not involved in the families,
It's going to get more and more expensive for the state, for the community.
Absolutely. You could only imagine what it costs to keep children in foster care, what it costs for them to, when they're involved in DJJ, Department of Juvenile Justice, because they didn't have a mentor with them, because they didn't have somebody that they thought cared about them. So they go out and find a connection somewhere else, whether it be with a local gang or just some guys out there engaged in mayhem. And they go ahead and do that. So the cost-benefit analysis to the state and to our community is tremendous, to invest early on in these organizations and these initiatives, as opposed to down the road when we're talking about how much does it cost to incarcerate an individual, because at a young age they didn't have that involvement with the father that these organizations can kind of light a fire under. And say, look at your kids over there. What are you doing? Don't stay on the sidelines. And so, again, many success stories. Everything's not perfect, and there are those cases that have not been successful, and that's unfortunate. And then you have to look at other permanency options. And so we do that, and we're doing that even a little bit more quicker now, because we don't have time to wait. It's important that we deal with this early on. We get these children when they're in their ages that they're still impressionable, and put them in the right direction. And so that's so key that we have that father figure in place. When you look at all the statistics, you talk about, you hear about when you have fathers involved, you have less incarceration, less involvement with the juvenile justice system, more successful in school, less behavioral issues, lower teen pregnancy rate. I mean, we can go on and on. I'm not a politician. I just work in the courthouse and try to get things accomplished on a day-to-day basis. But I'm aware of those things as well. And I'm a tax-paying citizen, and I don't want my tax dollars going to incarcerate someone when now we can deal with them and put them on the straight and narrow and make them a contributing member of society. So that's why these initiatives are so imperative.
There was a study I was reading about in kind of preparation for this. It's a long longitudinal study, and they were doing research on the effects of quantity and quality of a parent-father relationship as it related to their 20s and their 30s. And so even in their 30s, children who had higher quantity and or quality, and they ran it both ways, their cortisol levels were more regulated than were ones that had lower quantity or lower quality. They, in their 20s, had lower substance abuse issues. So those that had more time with dad were less likely to use drugs and alcohol, tobacco, all of that, any kind of substance, than were if they did not have that. So, and these are like, you're talking about 20 and 30-year studies that they're now following these kids and seeing the impact of a father. You kind of spoke to it, but in your mind, what is that? What is the answer here? If we're going to break, because we talk a lot at Man Up about breaking the cycle of generational fatherlessness, because at some point, you have empathy for a young man or young woman if they didn't have an example to see. How am I supposed to then go out and do that? You mentioned earlier, and I loved it, about your dad was a model for you. Yes, he was teaching you, but he was really modeling, and you were learning through his actions. So, maybe again leading the witness. But how what's the answer? How do we break this cycle?
Right. Well, that's something that we talk about all the time, breaking these cycles, whether it be teen pregnancy or whether it be incarceration, here fatherlessness. It's a stark example was right in front of me yesterday when there was an individual, both mom and dad came into the courtroom. They hadn't been engaged in doing the right things like they should have been doing. That's why the children were removed. And the mother was engaged in doing things to progress. The father was not. And we simply had the conversation. He shared with me something I did not know. And oftentimes I don't know all these things about the individuals. And as we're sitting there having the conversation, I'm saying, so how did visits go with, the child is not Timmy, but I'll just use the name. How'd your visit go with Timmy? And he said, well, it went well, but we were meeting inside. I mean, I could see it in an office or a setting similar to that. The case manager said, yeah, we'll be able to go outside if things progress, and we'll be able to get outside and meet, and Timmy can run around and do things. And I said, well, so talking to the dad, so that's on you. That's on you, that you'll be able, if things are going in the right direction, meaning you get engaged in your programs, whether it be domestic violence, anger management, you're screening like you should be on a regular basis, you're testing negative, not testing positive for cocaine and marijuana and fentanyl and the normal things that I'm seeing, then we'll be able to give you a little bit more freedom with your son. And he said, wow, that's encouraging. And what are you talking about? He said, well, anytime I go in and see my son, he said, it reminds me of when I was younger. I was in foster care, and I was in this same kind of setting.
Wow.
In these four walls, and somebody was visiting me. And I'm sitting there, and I knew none of this. Maybe I didn't do my due diligence and check into his history, because that might have been something I could have talked to him a while ago when he got off track. And we're having that discussion, and he's letting me know, you've encouraged me now. You've encouraged me to do better where I could break the cycle. Wow. This is him talking about breaking the cycle, right? Not us here sitting here talking about it. This is him, somebody that has fallen off track, not engaged, child in foster care, and he's saying that reminds me of when I was younger, and he said, I can't allow that to continue to happen. So I have to break the cycle. I have to engage. You're encouraging me with your words, and I'm going to do better. And so that's an example of someone acknowledging what's going on, us having that conversation, and setting the stage so he can break that cycle. And so if this child is engaged with his father, if they're able to have some quality time, and if his father is able to stay involved in his life and to mentor him by his actions, and he sees him going to work, and he sees him treating his mother well, and he sees him engaged appropriately in society with law enforcement, see the sheriff's, deputy sheriff, how you doing today? And see people on the street and engage with them properly. Those are the kind of things that the child will start to emulate, and I think we can see that as an example of breaking that cycle.
Yeah, and it's almost as if I think he needed to have that realization on his own, that maybe like God for some reason had it to where you didn't like present that to him too early, that he needed to have that realization when he was sitting on his own of, this is just reminding me of what I've been through.
Sure.
So I can imagine that resonated with him even deeper, that it was a self-realization.
Oh, no question. It was kind of like an epiphany right there as we're all sitting there and listening to him, and he's almost breaking down, and he's saying that, wow, you really encouraged me.
Wow.
And I have to break this cycle.
Man, I love it when I hear a feel good, a feel good. Now, what he does with that, we don't know yet, right? Jury's still out.
Oh, correct.
But I think, speaking of National Mentoring Month and all that, I mean, that is, we need that. And part of our mission is waking up men in our community to say, hey, listen, if you had a good dad, if you had a good upbringing, if you had all of that together, how can you contribute to solving the problem? And that's part of it too. I've seen this area, and I think there are other areas of the country that are resource rich, a lot of resources. This is what we've seen, but without and we call them coaches, so I use that term, but without a mentor, without a coach, without somebody to kind of, sometimes a guy can know, oh, I need to go take this drug test, or, oh, I need to go to this parenting class, or, oh, I need to go see my kid on this day, in a supervised visit, or whatever the case may be. But he feels alone. That's sometimes a hard ask, because we're all a little insecure at the end of the day. And so what we've seen is, yes, there are resources there to help in the community, but it's really helpful to have a warm body who says, hey, man, I'm in your corner. Let's go do this together. And so that's what I'm encouraged about the fatherhood bill, about what Florida is trying to, I think, help the other states see as well, is that, listen, resources are good, but let's make sure we've got people, even the Hope Navigator. I don't know how much you know about the Hope Navigator in Florida, but giving that one person who can take that person along all of their issues, right? And not a handoff and a handoff and a handoff, and here's a referral for this and a referral for that. Now you've got like 7 different referrals, but having that one person who say, I'll help you navigate all of these referrals.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, that's essential, because just imagine how we feel when we're calling up the phone company or about your lights or something, and then you put on hold, and then you sent to someone else, and then you put on hold again. I mean, we probably have the wherewithal to deal with that and to sit patiently, and probably can get on our laptops and do something else while we're on hold. Imagine if you're in a housing crisis. Imagine if you're on a minute-to-minute phone. Imagine if you have lack of transportation, and then you're on hold.
Yeah, and the emotional aspect of your children.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
On top of that.
Yeah. So you have all those pressures on you, and then you're just being handed off to one person after another. I'm not saying it's okay to give up, but you could see why some people do. Having that mentor, that warm body, somebody in there that can literally give you a call or say, hey, let's meet up for some coffee or for some tea or something, or a nice beverage, and get together and see how you're doing and make sure you're on track. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, it sure does. Well, listen, this has been a really great hour.
Yes.
I think our viewers are going to, and listeners are going to be able to get a picture of what happens in that courtroom, that dependency, because we talk about dependency a lot. And I think, guys don't really, we hear this all the time. I had no idea that this is how it was. I had no idea that this is what was going on. I had no idea the Tampa Bay area had more kids in care than any of the areas in the state of Florida.
Absolutely.
We hear this kind of thing all the time. So I'm hopeful that your words today will be encouraging to other men who are listening and who can serve as a father figure. We talk about it on our podcast all the time. Like that single thing can be the difference between success and failure in life.
Yeah, correct. It can. These initiatives are tremendous. I am ecstatic that you all are involved. I hope other people jump on the bandwagon and do this. Florida's leading the way. We have the legislation out there. They're putting the funds behind it. That's what you look for.
Yeah.
Are there going to be funds available to get these going? Donations are great, but for the state to step in. I mean, and when we have in upwards of 3,000 children in care in our local area, those numbers need to come down. And they can only come down with the help of our fathers really taking the reins and jumping in. And a lot of them need some mentoring and some coaching and just a little guidance to get there. So this is tremendous. Glad I had the opportunity to come and share with listeners and others about the opportunities that exist, and that it's not all gloom and doom. It looks like a bright future, and we can all chip in and do our part.
That's great.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Patros podcast as we're embracing healthy masculinity. And thank you again, Judge Manning, or thank you, Your Honor.
There it is.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Happy New Year.